the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to welcome the Foreign Minister of Palestine, Mr. Riyad Maliki, to today's session. We find it reprehensible that Mr. Tor Winsland, Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process, insisted once again on not including in his briefing any information on Israeli settlement activities in the occupied Syrian Golan, nor any information on the repeated Israeli attacks on Syria's sovereignty, most recently the attack on Latakia's commercial port, which resulted in significant material damage. My delegation had sent multiple letters to the Secretary General and to Mr. Winsland directly to update them on the situation in the occupied Syrian Golan and to draw their attention to the repeated Israeli attacks on Syria's and the region's stability and security. His disappointing briefing today lacked objectivity and balance and did not address all the aspects of his mandate. Madam President, in yet another dangerous escalation, the head of the Israeli authorities held on the 26th of December 2021 a government meeting in the occupied Syrian Golan. During the meeting, he announced doubling the number of settlers in the occupied Syrian Golan by providing $317 million to construct thousands of housing units in two new settlements, Asif and Matar. This is a flagrant violation of international law, the 1949 Fourth Geneva Convention, relevant UN resolutions, especially Resolution 497 of 1981, and yet another failed attempt to perpetuate the occupation and to obliterate the Syrian identity of the Golan. The Syrian Arab Republic strongly condemns these grave provocations and violations committed by the Israeli occupiers in the occupied Syrian Golan, including confiscating lands and property, imposing demographic changes, and looting natural resources. We remain committed to our right to recover fully the occupied Syrian Golan, occupied since June 4th, 1967, by all means possible under international law. This is an eternal and an imprescriptible right. The Syrian Arab Republic stresses that all decisions taken by Israel, the occupying power, to change the natural and demographical character of the Golan and impose its laws and administration on the Golan are null and void and have no legal effect under international law and relevant UN resolutions, notably Resolution 497 of 1981. This resolution considers that Israel's decision to impose its laws, jurisdiction, and administration on the occupied Syrian Golan as null, void, and has no legal effect. The Syrian Arab Republic calls on all member states not to recognize any illegal status resulting from the illegitimate Israeli practices in the occupied Syrian Golan. We call on them to condemn and seek to end these practices. Madam President, the continued Israeli attacks on Syria's sovereignty, bordering on hysterical, represent a flagrant violation of the 1974 disengagement agreement and relevant UN resolutions. It is a clear evidence that Israel supports terrorists in Syria and fuels the war. It is another escalation that threatens regional peace and security. The Syrian Arab Republic stresses that, or believes that, the reckless and provocative Israeli behavior would not have escalated to this level had it not been for the protection provided by the successive U.S. administration to Israel, the occupying power. The Syrian Arab Republic calls on the Security Council to end its silence and to uphold its responsibilities in practice and urgently under the UN Charter to maintain international peace and security. This is necessary to compel Israel to end its violations and to hold it accountable for its rogue behavior and for its impunity. This is necessary to compel Israel to end its occupation of the occupied Syrian Golan and to withdraw up to the line of June 4th, 1967, in line with relevant UN resolutions. Madam President, the Syrian Arab Republic strongly condemns the Israeli settlement policies in the occupied Palestinian territories, especially in the West Bank and Jerusalem, and most recently what happened today in Sheikh Jarrah. We remain committed to supporting the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. We stand with the Palestinian people in their legitimate struggle to defend their land and recover their occupied territories and all their legitimate rights, especially their right to establish their own independent state on their territories with Jerusalem as capital and as a full member of the UN, as well as the right of the Palestinian refugees to return to their homeland in line with relevant UN resolutions, notably Resolution 194 of 1948. Madam President, before closing, I would like to refer to the statement made earlier today by the representative of the European Union. The statement included many hostile references to the situation in Syria, even though this has nothing to do with today's meeting. That statement was a clear example of political blindness, as it included many biases. The EU representative did not condemn the Israeli attacks on Syria's sovereignty, even though he claimed that he respects our sovereignty. The EU representative did not call for ending Israeli settlement activities in the Syrian Golan, which run counter to international law, even though the EU representative called for respecting this law. Can there be a more glaring example of political hypocrisy and double standards? Maybe the most hypocritical was when Israel's representative today called for condemning a defenseless people that defies occupation with stones and rocks. He called on the world not to pay attention to Israel's attacks with heavy weapons, missiles, and live ammunition against Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the